I'm making pocket flaps. This is a flap marker. This is the under and the top patterns. So the top has to be slightly larger. And this is the pin. For under flap, I used the lighter weight fabric, and I pinned it, prepared for stitching. Now I turn it around. Use my tool to fix the corners nicely. Okay, and now I'll backstitch it. So backstitch it really helps to roll nicely. And now I'm ready to press. Making quilt pockets. I have a pattern, I have a cut, and I'll mark the pins where it has to stop and finish. Making a quilt pockets. I have pins where it's supposed to start and where it's supposed to finish. This is my pattern. This is quilt pockets prepared, 1.5" wide strips, and this is my flap that I need to insert at the end. So I will put this and go to the sewing machine and stitch quarter from here to here. Double check with the flap to be slightly less, maybe 16ths less than the pocket, and also make sure you mark lines that is perfectly perpendicular to the stitch. I mark with the pin exactly above the stitch where the bottom stitch stopped, and now I can stitch this. And stop, slow, and back tack. So we sewed a besom pocket to the right side of the jacket. This is the wrong side of the jacket, and we have to make sure that we sewed it correctly. So the space between few places is exactly same. This is a little less than 1/2 inch, and that's what I wanted. So now I need to cut this, and when I cut this, I need to cut, it's called ducktail. I can't cut all the way to the end. I have to cut about 3/8 away from the end, but when I cut it, I have to make sure that I don't cut the pocket. So about a besom pocket. So I'm gonna hold it like this and then cut through and through. So now I stopped about 3/8 away, and now I'm gonna do the corners. So corners, I have to go into this point and into this point and create, it's called ducktail here. But when I cut, I have to make sure that my little finger is there so that I don't cut the besom pockets. Just like this, see? So this is called ducktail. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. Here you go. Now I need to go to the ironing board and press it. And when I press it, I'll open seams here inside like this and press it, and then I turn this one and press it. Okay, so I am at the pressing board and I press this open seam and press this open seam. So in the couture sewing, you have to cut extra 1/16 here. Like this seam allowance, have to cut 1/16 more, because when this turns, then because the turns, the fabric adds up, and so that it's perfectly kissing right now, like this. Okay, as you see, this is pressed. So, but I still like this to be as narrow as possible. That's why I trimmed a little bit here, and now I'm gonna baste it so that I can keep it narrow. And after this, I can top stitch it. Any color thread, because I'm going to remove this later. So I like this not more than 1/4. See, the top is a little bit thicker, so I will roll it back to make sure it's thinner. And I can also baste from inside. That's why I had to cut little at inside seam allowance so that I know that it rolls, but I also have to make sure that the seam allowance inside is not folding, like so that this is not folding. If it's folding too much, then if it's folding, then will be like really bulky. Okay, so this is a lot better now. So now I'm going to stitch at the corners. Okay, now I'm doing a ducktail stitch. Corners. So let's check this out. try to catch this little ducktail with the pocket, and let's see what it looks like outside. Okay, so the outside looks perfect. Besom is ready, flap is ready. Now I need to insert and stitch. So when I insert, I have to make sure that it's even. So if I want this to finish 2.5, I need to make sure that in both places, front and at the back, it's 2.5. And now I'm going to pin it. Also, as you see, it fits perfectly. And 2.5, and then I'm going to go to machine and crack stitch right here into the seam. Inside, attaching pocket bag. Stitch it here. Clean, and then stitch it up here. And then stitch the sides.